Hey, Mike here with Canadian Musician. Right now in the Danforth neighborhood in Toronto at Zav Coffee Shop, and with me, Jeremy Fisher. Very acclaimed singer-songwriter, but now kind of going in a different direction. Latest album coming out, I believe it's next week, called Highway to Spell. It's a kid's album. Of course, corresponds to the turning point in your life, becoming a father, so I'm interested to get into it. But Jeremy, man, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So I guess I kind of gave away the lead there, but I guess the logical place to start is essentially at this point, especially after Lemon Squeeze, which gave you your biggest kind of radio hit of your career, the song "Oh" with Serena Ryder. Is it just why you went with a kids album as a follow-up to that?
Some people would argue that the song "Uh-Oh" is a bit of a kid's song. You know, like I remember I wrote that before I had a kid, and other parent friends of mine would be like, my 2-year-old loves the song "Uh-Oh." They're just learning what "Uh-Oh" means, you know, dropping things intentionally off their high tray and saying "Uh-Oh." So
I have a 1.5-year-old and she's constantly going "Uh-oh."
Exactly. So you know, it could be argued that I was kind of making kids music back then too. But yeah, I had a daughter 2 years ago, and I took 7 weeks off to look after her before we had daycare lined up when she was about a year old. And I just started, I have a little 1960s K acoustic guitar. It's like a kid's guitar that hangs in my kitchen on a little hook. So I would just pull it down and, you know, entertain her and just, like, make up songs about the things we were doing or gonna do or had done. And by the end of the 7 weeks, I just had, and I would make little voice memos of them or little videos, you know, to show my girlfriend when she got home from work. End of the 7 weeks, when we sent her off to daycare, I realized I had more than like an album's worth of material. So I chose the best songs, went into my little studio out back, and made a record.
Nice. I'd seen you say somewhere that you actually had wanted to make a kid's record before your daughter was born, but it was only kind of once she was born that you could kind of get in the headspace of kids or kids' music or that kind of thing. Was it just the experience of your day-to-day life at that point? Like, could you kind of define what that difference was, why you couldn't get in the headspace before having the kid?
Yeah, I actually took off 3 months from touring before she was born, just in case she came early, and so that was when I thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna make a record for her that's like, you know, we're thinking about her, we're getting the house ready for her to arrive, and so I thought kind of part of my nesting would be I'd make this little record that I could play for her when she's a baby, maybe with lullabies and stuff on it. And but not being a dad, I just didn't, like, the well was just dry. Like when I went to it, I would just sit there in my studio and kind of stare at the wall and be like, what do I write about? And anything I did write about seemed too contrived. Yeah. And so I just didn't do it. And then I kind of let go of the idea. I thought, well, maybe this is not for me. You know, I don't want to force something. And then just in hanging out with her and spending all that time in like the kids' mindset, going to play groups, you know, going to the park and going to the library, I just became inspired. Also, I should say, you know, listening to, like, doing road trips, because we've got family all over the country, and every summer we drive down east. My girlfriend's from Cape Breton, so every summer we do a drive to Cape Breton, and we listen to the best of Raffi, like, on repeat the whole way down there, and it's great stuff. And I got really inspired by the idea of kind of following that Raffi template of making songs that are aimed at kids, but that have all the care and quality and attention to detail that we expect in music for everybody or for adults or whatever. So yeah, I think it was a bunch of things that kind of came together that helped me conceptualize what this was going to be.
Yeah. And it's kind of a bunch of there I want to touch on, but I just relate to that idea of, like you were saying, before your daughter arrived, just not be able to get in that headspace and feeling like it was too contrived. Like, I know, again, like myself having a 1.5-year-old, is like, before she arrived, I'd never considered myself a kids person. I didn't like doing the voices, and I just couldn't connect with kids. But so, yeah, it's a totally different experience once you have your own kid with you day in and day out, and you find yourself doing things that you thought you wouldn't have done before.
Owning things you never thought you would have brought into your house. I know. Yeah, I sort of think or I feel like I've got two different lives. Like the person that I was, there's remnants of the person I was before I became a father. But it's just so different now that I feel like it's an opportunity to kind of like wipe the slate clean and start all over again. And honestly, that's how I feel as a musician. Like all the enthusiasm that the whole team, my management and agent, and we all have this like feeling of it being me being a new artist again. Yeah. And that's really fun because it's different. I know that a lot of my audience is either doesn't have kids or their kids have grown up or whatever. It's not it's not for them. And so we're branching out, to find a new audience in a way, and it feels like we've got that excitement of what it was like 15 years ago when I put out, my first major label record. Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you feel, having done the folk rock thing for a long time, do you feel now putting out a kids album, and especially touring a kids album, do you feel like you're kind of navigating a different industry all of a sudden?
Yeah, because it's not it's not like I can just do all the same media stops or all the same venues that I'm used to doing. Some of them, there's some crossover, but yeah, it's a whole new world. And we're trying to figure out, Tiffany, my publicist, and I were just in the car on the way here talking about like who are we trying to engage? Because you can't, and I believe you shouldn't really market to children. Yeah. So we're trying to engage parents, and we're trying to make something that is for families. Yeah. And where do those people spend their time? They're like, I know, because I am a parent, I have a bit of insight. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts now because I don't necessarily have time to sit down and watch TV or Netflix. Even I have to be multitasking. I listen to podcasts when I walk my dog. He needs to go for an hour walk a day at least. So that's my entertainment and my media that I take in right now, my primary source. Yeah, so it's new, and that's exciting. It's always fun to kind of feel like you're breaking new ground, at least for yourself,
It's funny, I completely identify with that. We need to exchange podcast recommendations.
I got some good ones, so we'll talk about it.
And the idea of, reaching out to parents and kind of connecting with parents is something, again, that I can completely understand where you're coming from. And I know as I keep coming back to, seems natural, this conversation, being a parent, and now the kids' music's kind of coming into the house and that kind of thing, and the joy of finding a kids' album that doesn't drive you mental. Know what I mean? If I don't have to, anything that will prevent me from having to listen to the Wiggles again. And so, and it also reminds me of when I spoke to Fred Penner last year. And when I was talking with him, and I think you would connect with this. He was talking about how his version of kids' music is really just folk music that is easy for kids to identify with. And I think that it's my perception that that's kind of a lot of the approach you were taking, that this isn't too far really in a lot of ways from what you were doing before. It's just maybe it's with a different audience in mind, but it's still folk music at its roots.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, that's what I think I've really enjoyed about making this, is I've gotten to indulge, knowing that there's not like a commercial radio market for kids music in the way that there is for some of the other albums I've done. I've totally indulged my folky side and gone for those traditional singable melodies, really short, succinct ideas, and I've really reveled in the art and craft of making songs like that, and it's sort of informed me. It's made me rethink how I just make music in general. Maybe I've made it too complicated, and maybe there's beauty in greater simplicity, and just taking a small theme and fleshing it out and getting the most out of that little theme. So yeah, I think of it the exact same way. It should be something that while maybe the subject matter is aimed at young people, at kids, there should be those elements of traditional folk music that everyone can identify with. I think that's what makes a song great. And I tried to stack the record, like there's some very obvious young kid stuff. There's some stuff on there that I tried to think of with like an educator perspective in mind. And then there's a song like, I think the song Turtle and Guy, like that is a song, for people who haven't heard it, is a guy. It's about a guy named Turtle and a turtle named Guy who live together, and it's just like a silly folk song, but it's not like that different. I forget who sings the song, but the guy who, from I think the 60s or 70s, he wrote a song about his dog named Cat, and he's got a cat named Dog. Anyway, I'm spacing the singer's name right now, popular like kind of anti-folk hero. That's a song like I could have maybe put on my first record. I might not have referenced Raffi in it, but who knows? Maybe I would have. And it was really fun trying to like think of everybody that would be listening to this record. And I think at this time in my life, with a 2-year-old at home, I have a unique perspective that's going to be unique to this point in my life. Like 5 years from now, I'm not going to probably remember too much what it's like having a 2-year-old and trying to drive across the country with her in the back seat and keep her entertained. So, it's just like been the perfect storm in my life for this record to happen.
What did your management label, Tiffany, your publicist, the team around you, like I said off the top, like you were coming off of Oh and the Lemon Squeeze Con, you probably what I think is your most I guess commercially successful, or at least radio-wise successful single and album in that sense. So what did they say when you came back to them and said, actually, I want to follow that up with a kids record?
Well, I was surprised. I mean, they have kind of, I used to tour a lot, and I used to work really hard. I mean, I still work hard, but I used to be out on the road like 6 months a year, when I started doing this. And I've really dialed it back in the last few years, because leading up to having a kid, I wanted to see if I could make a schedule that was more family friendly before we decided to have a kid. I thought that was the responsible thing to do. And so they've already gotten used to me being the, person that says no to a fair amount of things and tries to keep a low and they kind of wouldn't bug me, and they would let me kind of dictate what I wanted to do. And then if I said I want to go out and do a tour, we'd put it together and we'd make it happen. So when I said I was going to do this, I don't think anybody was surprised, but what surprised me was the enthusiasm that came back. My managers have kids. My manager's got a 10-year-old and a 11-year-old, so 12-year-old, and a 6-year-old now. I don't know. They're when they turn another year, I'm like, it feels like it shouldn't have happened so soon. I know, yeah. And anyway, so my managers have kids. My agents have kids. And actually, my agent who's booking this project, he's got a 14-month-old right now. So we've got kids who are very close in the same age bracket. And I think it's just like kind of striking us both at the same time. So anyway, they came back and were like over the moon about this. And it turns out I'm booked by Pacan Artists. They're the biggest booker of children's entertainment in the country. So there was already an infrastructure for what I'm doing that I didn't even realize was there. So the reaction was really positive. And I think that's why everyone's been kind of invigorated and excited, because it seems like the right thing for me to do at this time.
Just to return for a moment to the idea of like the folk roots of your kids' songs, did you do any... was this completely based on instinct, or were you looking at like Pete Seeger and Jerry Garcia and other folk artists who have done kids' music? Were you doing any research in that way?
I didn't do a whole ton of research, because what I wanted to do, even though I was familiar with those artists and those records, when I think about Pete Seeger doing a kids' record or playing for kids, he's not drawing on other like kids music. He's drawing on his influences as a folk singer. So I wanted that. I wanted to bring that. I thought it was really important that I make something that is, filtered through just my authentic, voice as a songwriter, but made with kids in mind. So I didn't want to go out and be like, okay, well, like I gotta. The Wiggles are really popular, so I gotta have, and this is their most popular song. I gotta have something like this. Like, no, I wanted to make like the song "Busy Bee" on the record. That is like one of my good friends who's also an influence on me musically is Joel Plaskett. That to me, when I was making that with like the Shakers and stuff, I was like, I could see Joel like playing this groove on the drums, and turning this into like a folk rock kind of song. So I wanted it to be that. I wanted to be like, well, what if Joel Plaskett made a kid's song? What would it sound like? I think it would sound like Busy Bee. It would probably sound different. And he actually did make a kid's record with his sister, which I haven't heard yet. So that's what I was trying to bring into it. So that hopefully I could find like a distinct voice in the genre instead of, being another Wiggles imitator.
God, no more Wiggles. You're going to be obviously heading on tour in support of the album, but like we were talking about before we started, you've done a few shows. So just as far as first impressions go, what's it like playing for kids and parents at 2 p.m. versus what you've been used to?
First of all, I love me a show that is in the afternoon and it gets me home for dinner and in bed by 9 o'clock. It's been really fun. I actually just I've done a couple of shows for kids. I did an outdoor festival in Ottawa. I did Winterlude a couple weeks ago with a trio outside. So my drummer that often plays with me was playing like shakers and tambourines and bongos. I'm my electric bass player. And that was like, it was great. I haven't figured out a place for like any down tempo stuff whatsoever. So it's all got this like swing and this lilt to it, all the tunes, even the covers that I do. And it's just like, it's fun to play an up tempo set, and the kids are responding, and I get to do, when I play my shows, when I play the rest of my catalog and play in a bar at night or a theater or whatever, I try and do a little bit of audience participation, but I'm aware of the fact that like that's not for everybody, and not every adult wants to like sing and have like participation and during the show. They might be okay with it once or twice throughout the show. Whereas with kids, it's like every song I want to have something for them to do. It's really about them. It's got to engage them, and that really appeals to me, because as a solo performer, in a way, when I'm the only one on stage, like my group is the audience there, and I need to get the energy from them that a band might rely on from their other members. So, kids are game for anything, and they're enthusiastic. When they've got opinions, they'll shout them out at you, and that can be really entertaining and enlightening and blunt and honest. And that's refreshing, and it's great.
How much of that did you have to, because like you said, especially as a solo artist, but any veteran, touring performer is going to, there's a point in which you learn to be attuned with your audience, and you start to be able to kind of read almost unconscious cues from the audience about, and when they're really into it, when they're distracted, that kind of thing. How did that feel being up on stage in front of kids and I suppose parents, but especially kids for the first time? Like, did you have to consciously learn how to be more in tune with that audience and kind of vibe off of them?
I was a little nervous about it before the first show. I was more nervous before I got up there than I was when I got up. When I got up, it sort of... I grew up going to a summer camp called YMCA Wanakita in Halliburton, and really got started like playing guitar and singing in front of people there, around the campfire, and doing traditional songs that were engaging an audience, often a young audience. And so that part of me is still like, that's strong in my roots, and I can revert back to that, like, and so that just takes over. That instinct takes over, and I go with it. So no, I look forward to the record coming out and the people knowing the songs before. So that's been another tough thing. But that's also kind of part of like what I was talking about, the challenge and the fun of feeling like a new artist again. Is like, I've got something to prove. I've got to win over these kids. I'm not Raffi. I don't have Baby Beluga. Like, they don't know this stuff. So I've got to test it, road test it, and see, is it like by the second chorus, can they sing along? Is this going to work in a live setting? What works? Do I have to change the key from how it works on the record? And so there's a lot of figuring out to do, and that's fun. Like, I can't go on autopilot the way I might be able to get away with the odd show that I've done 1,000 times,
Nice. Well, Jeremy, this has been a real pleasure, man. Like I said again when we were chatting before we started, first time I guess you had come to my attention was when Folk Alliance was last year, like 3-4 years ago or so. Saw you at a showcase there, and I was like, oh man, who's this dude? And so I've been following you since then, and so unfortunately it took so long to meet you, but I'm glad that we finally did it. I really enjoyed this. Thanks, man.
Me too. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, I should add Highway to Spell, of course, the album we've been talking about. Is it March 9th?
March 9th, and you can pre-order now on jeremyfisherjr.com.
There you go. Jeremy, man, thank you.